What's up, guys? I'm Zach Nava of Nava Reptiles, and welcome back to the channel. So this past couple weeks has been pretty insane. I've got my first video that's about to hit 1,000 views, which you know, for some people doesn't sound like a lot, but to me it's super exciting. Considering, like, to kind of give you some background, like most of my videos from the start haven't broken 100 views, which is fine. Like, I'm excited if I get 10 views, 5 views, 1 view. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not about numbers. But I posted a video a couple weeks ago. You guys have probably seen it, I hope, from Blake Stewart of Stewart Design, from his house, just showing his snake room and things like that. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up above. But yeah, it's just, like I said, it's just been kind of crazy. You know, I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable on camera. I'm starting to, you know, script things a little less, and just feel good. You know, I guess is the gist of it. I'm just feeling good about what I'm doing. I'm feeling good about just everything. This is a great community. I say it all the time. I'm surrounded by great people, and I have such a great support system in this hobby. It never ceases to amaze. So anyways, diving into the video that we've got going on today. I've been wanting to put this one out for a few weeks now. So this, obviously, right behind me, you guys may have already seen this. I'm not sure if I posted anything or had it in the background in any of my videos so far. Anybody that follows me on social media, though, will have seen it most likely. I finally got some animal plastics enclosures for my bigger dwarf retics. So for those that don't know, I have the world's only pair of 50% Solaire, 50% Solaire dwarf. They're both visual tigers, and they're both 100% het for rennet ghost. I'm the only person in the world that has that pair. There was only 3 eggs that actually survived from the clutch, and only 2 of those are visual tigers. There is another sibling. It's a male that's out there. That's a normal. That's 50, so a 50% Solaire, normal, but het for rennet ghost. So that animal is out there. I'm not exactly sure where it ended up. I got this pair from Garrett Hartle. They were produced by John Cashman. So anyways, moving past that, I've been wanting to get them into some bigger enclosures for a little while now. For those that are looking to order cages and stuff from Animal Plastics, I'm gonna be honest. I've ordered like some eBay cages and stuff like that, like a lot of other PVC products. The construction of these is absolutely top notch. It's been talked about to me numerous times in the past, like how good they were, but it was never really broken down in detail as to why. I'm telling you, like, the way that they cut all this PVC and the way that they mill it all, and just the way the joints are, like, every little detail of these cages is well thought out. So I've loved the construction. Getting into the meat and potatoes of this video, though, what I had issues with was not necessarily installing my heat panels, because my heat panel, they're straightforward to install. But what I had problems with was my temperature probe placement. I was having issues where I had huge swings in temperatures for my hotspot, and obviously for anybody that's trying to breed snakes, I mean, just in general, you need consistent temps. And we're talking like a 10 to 12 degree swing in temperature is what I was seeing when I first got this cage set up. That's why I only have one of them set up. You guys may see now there's a water dish in there, and I don't think you can see the female. She's kind of hiding behind me. She just ate tonight, so she's right under her heat. But it's taken me a while to put this video together, because it took me a while to actually nail this process down. I think this was the 3rd placement that I'm on in terms of the temperature probe, and I'm finally happy. And that's why, again, I've gone ahead and moved her in, and everything seems to be good now. I'm still checking it constantly, because I'm just super paranoid about the temp swing again. We'll dive into this. I'm sure the title is going to kind of be descriptive enough to let you guys know what's going on, but I want to show you guys how I installed my radiant heat panels in my Animal Plastics enclosures, and I want to show you guys what I personally found to be the best way for me to place my probes. I haven't seen it done this way before. That's not to say that I'm being overly original. Don't anybody get butthurt if this is how you've done it before. But this is the way that I chose to do it. It's the way that I have, again, just found through some experimentation over a number of weeks to be what I trust the most. And I'm really excited about it. So I hope that you guys will enjoy this, and I would love to see this implemented by some other people in the hobby. So let's dive right into it. Alright guys, so hopefully you can get a decent visual of what I'm working on here. So for everybody that's wondering if it's not in the description or something, these are the Animal Plastics T8 cages. They are 4 foot by, I think it's 30 inches deep by 12 inches tall. I'll be honest, I wish I would have ordered the 18-inch tall cages just to give them a little bit more height. So hopefully you guys have a pretty good view of what I am doing. So I'm going to start with installing the radiant heat panel and showing you guys how I did that. I will leave a full description of all of the tools that I'm using down below in terms of like the sizes of bits and things like that. It'll be scattered throughout the video. Like as I'm using bits, I'll let you guys know what sizes they are, drill bits. So I'm going to start with this right here. This is a 9/64 drill bit, 9/64, 9/64 bit. And the reason I'm using that, I'll see if I can give you guys a little bit of a visual. This bit, and again, I'm using 9/64. I'm also using the screws that were provided to me by ProHeat for their heat panels. This screw is just slightly smaller. I'm sure it's not showing up well on the camera. This screw, this bit is just slightly smaller than this screw. The idea being for me that I want the whole, I want when I screw this in, I want there to be 2 different types of retention of this heat panel. I don't want there to be a chance for this to fall down. And so there's a nut obviously that goes on the top of this, so that's going to retain it. You know, it'll sandwich the heat panel. This will be, you know, it'll be sandwiched between this nut or this bolt and the nut that goes on it. But also just for a little added security, I wanted to drill the holes a little bit small so that literally as I'm actually screwing this into the PVC cage, these threads are actually threading into the PVC. You know, PVC is a soft enough material where you don't have to actually take a tap and thread and add threads with a tap. You can actually, you know, these bolts will actually thread themselves. And that's what I did with the first one. So literally the heat panel on the first one that I installed, it will hold itself up even if the nuts weren't there. So if for some reason the nuts came loose or something weird happened, it's just a little added security. It's just something that makes me feel better. So it's something I would recommend to anybody else that's installing these themselves. The other thing I will say, I'll 100% admit, if you're ordering these cages and you're planning on going with ProHeat heat panels, which is all Animal Plastics uses, it's all I would personally recommend. Just have Animal Plastics install them for you. The only reason that I didn't was because obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so things were a little weird in terms of shipping and stuff like that. And so I, in an attempt to get things done a little bit quicker, I opted not to do that. You know, but I personally would tell you, if you're watching this and you haven't ordered anything yet, I would just go through Animal Plastics and order the heat panels to be delivered to them and installed by them. It's just easier, it's cleaner. I've seen the way that they install them. The way they install them is beautiful. But again, this video is mostly just to, the major point for me was to show the way that I put my heat probes. Because again, the way the panels get installed, it's not really that serious, but the way that the temperature probes go in is absolutely super important. And so I wanted to share my experience with you guys because I did have issues, like I said, you know, in the beginning of this video. So anyways, let's dive into this. 9/64 bit. The way that I'm starting out is I'm actually putting the heat panel on top. Another kind of little tip is if you are installing these, one option would be to absolutely install this heat panel before you have put the cage all the way together. I'm not doing that because I don't feel like taking the top off of this cage again. And this is the way that I did it on the first one. It works fine. It's not a big deal. There are definitely probably better ways, and I'm sure somebody's going to be upset about the way that I'm doing this, but trust me, it works fine. Not a big deal. So again, I'm lining this heat panel up on top. I'm not going to take measurements this time. When I did the first one, I was like super particular about it. I'm just kind of eyeballing it that it is roughly in the middle in terms of front to back. I'm hoping that you can kind of see this on the camera that I've got set up secondarily. But yeah, so I'm gonna just kind of eyeball the centering of this and get these first 2 holes drilled, which are what will actually be how I will mount this. If you do this the same way that I'm doing it, be very careful that you are not drilling into the metal of the frame of the heat panel. It's pretty easy to tell by feel with the drill bit when you get started, so it's not difficult to avoid. But again, if you're not thinking about it, or if you're not paying attention, it would be easy to drill into the metal. I don't think it would be a problem outside of the fact that their nuts do rely on that that hole to be a certain size for their bolts to retain itself. So try not to wear away into that metal, because it will cause you issues later. All right, so that's hole 1. And again, you'll see I'm kind of wiggling this drill around. That's, again, just to make sure that, like I was telling you, the backside is not, I'm drilling directly into the PVC, and then I'm not drilling into the frame, just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. That hole in the frame right there, I'm hoping that's showing up on camera. You don't want to wallow that hole out, because that hole is designed for this nut to hold it, hold this entire heat panel in place. So again, that's why I wanted to do the threading and things. It's just a little bit out of security. You could probably get away with putting these in here and having a washer on the face, but it's just a cleaner and smoother install. It's one less thing for your snake to rub their noses against if you don't do it that way. So again, I'm doing it the way that that ProHeat kind of essentially, designed these things to be done around. So you can see that's a relatively small hole. Again, I don't know if this how well it's going to show up on camera, but it's smaller than what this bolt is actually sized for. So this bolt will not press into those holes, but again, that is intentional by my design, the way that I'm choosing to install these. So let's go on ahead, and I'll get the panel screwed in, and I'll show you guys again just exactly what I do in terms of the holes that I put in the enclosure for the cables, and again specifically for the heat probe. Alright, so you can tell it's been a little while since I did my first one. I almost forgot to drill the hole in the back for the power cord to come through. The reason again that I'm doing this ahead of actually mounting the panel inside of the cage is because, first of all, it's a pain in the butt to drill from inside the cage unless you have a really small drill with really short drill bits, because again, this is not a really big cage. But beyond that, it's just easier to visualize things just in general. So I'm going to try to capture a good angle of showing you guys what I'm doing in terms of this heat panel. So the cord comes out of the center of the heat panel, out the back, and I just want that to be basically straight. So straight out the back, the shortest distance possible, so that I have as little of the cord inside of the cage as possible. I don't think I'm going to have any issues in terms of her like rubbing on it or anything like that. And again, so what I'm using here, this is, I believe, a 3/8 drill bit. Let me double check. Yep, so this is a 3/8 drill bit for the power cord hole. And yeah, I'm going to drill this through the back pretty close to the top, so that, there's no slack in it or anything like that, where she could kind of like get, looped under it, or, pull it through or anything like that. And later on I may add some P-clips, to it. I'll leave a link in the description to what a P-clip is if you guys are curious. Just to kind of see what that's maybe the only modification I might make to the way that I'm doing this. But yeah, so like I said, I'm going to drill this hole in the back really quick, and then again, I'll get it mounted. I'll try to get a shot of that, and again, I'll dive into what I did with the heat probe, because again, that is the whole point of this video. So yeah, let's get this done. So we got the panel installed onto the inside. You guys can see just how far these studs are still sticking up. It's probably a good, 3/4 of an inch or so. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly just install these nuts onto the tops of these. But again, you can see what I was talking about with why I use that smaller bit. The threads of these, I was able to screw in these bolts just with a screwdriver, and it cut its own threads into the PVC, which again is just nice, because again, it's being held up now. It's installed. It's not hanging down. It's not pulling through or anything, and you guys can see these bolts are pretty solid. These nuts for me are just a little added security, and so I'm gonna get these installed on top of these, and I will show you how I trimmed off the excess of these bolts. It's super simple, and I'll probably take a file to the top of them later. I haven't done that yet on my other one, but again, this was just kind of experimental initially. I'm going to install this plug onto the cord. This comes with instructions from them. I'm not going to dive into it too deep. So in terms of their plug, and the way that the wiring works for this thing. Again, most of this was just really to kind of show you guys how I'm securing my probe. That's kind of the most important part. I'll tighten those down shortly. All right, so this is a little different. I was inspired, I would say, a little bit by Garrett's use of coat hangers for cage locks. Unfortunately, I didn't have any good steel metal coat hangers around my house that were kind of heavy gauge enough, and I did debate on, because you could, if you needed to, if you don't have what I'm going to show you here in a second, you could definitely go, you could use probably like TIG welding wire. Like if you have access to any kind of a welding shop, most of those places will have a ton of TIG filler rod, welding rod. You could probably use something like that. But what I'm using is actually a coat hanger. So these are just like the cheap plastic little, like coat hangers that, for like jeans or whatever that you would get from like a store. What I'm going to be using from this is actually the metal part. So I'm going to take this metal hook and actually snap it out of this plastic, because this is a fairly heavy gauge, and it has a good bit of of strength to it. And I'll just snap these out, and I'll show you what I ended up using these for in terms of the temp probe. So my biggest issue initially was that I had the probe, my first installation that I did, the probe was underneath the basking shelf. Unfortunately, obviously, with it being under the basking shelf when using a radiant heat panel, it was not getting a lot of direct heat, which I kind of should have foreseen as being a problem. But that's why we experiment with things, and when you set up a new enclosure, you let it run on its own with no animals in it for a little while. So I did that, and I found that it was not getting a good enough reading. So even with me like kind of cranking the temp up to adjust, because you would think, and this was my thought, you would think that, okay, as long as the heat is consistent, it shouldn't be an issue, right? And I've seen numerous people that have their temp probes in the same spot, so I didn't think it would be a problem, but I was seeing huge swings. So I moved it from the back of the enclosure to the side of this enclosure, just to get it a little bit more exposed to open air. And I did and I didn't like that. I still was having temperature swings, and the other part of that was I was having to have the probe much more exposed into the enclosure, and I have a problem with that because, again, as she moves around in this cage, she's going to touch it if her body's resting on it, if she bends it, moves it, things like that. I knew that it would be a problem, and so I was trying to think of a way that I could get the probe in a more solid position, and in such a way that she would maybe not touch it as much. So like I said, I was having temperature swing problems. I reached out to Spyder Robotics, actually, through email. They have a really great team over there. They got back to me super quickly, and I was just telling them that I was having issues. So their recommendation was to actually, they said to take high quality duct tape and tape the probe directly to the heat panel. That's not something I'm going to do. It's just not. Anybody that's running their stuff that way, that's great. It's just, for me, it did not sound safe. It did not sound ideal. And so, yeah, that's just not the way that I'm going to do this. I'm not going to dive into it any more than that. So what I decided to do instead was try to get the probe as close to touching the panel as I could without actually touching the panel. And so I'm like, okay, well, how can I do that? Do I go in from the side? And again, same thing, issue being, I don't want the temp probe hanging out 7 inches into the inside of this enclosure. So like I said, that's where this came in for me. So I'll kind of give you guys I'll show you guys what I'm going to do with this, but the kind of gist of it is that I'm going to take this clip. You can see I've broken it off of the hanger now. I also like this is rounded off. It's not sharp. It's not something that's been cut with like cutters or anything like that. So I'm then going to basically drill some holes. I'm going to bend this up into a shape that will basically allow me to zip tie the probe to this, and this will actually be what holds the probe in place under the heat panel. So I'll show you guys that. I realized just now that I have actually forgotten to show you guys how I cut off these 3/4 inch or so of these bolts. And the way that I personally did it was just with I call them Dykes. As a mechanic, that's what we've always called them. Wire cutters, whatever you want to call them. But again, I call them Dykes. So silly little tip, when you're cutting stuff like this, it will absolutely fly all over the place. Do this at your own risk. The way that I have avoided these things flying all over my room is that I'll go ahead and get my snips set up where they need to be, and I literally cover this in my hat. That way, when they fly off, they just, you know, hit my hat and they stay there. This is a little bit sharp right here. What I will do, I think I mentioned it before, I'm going to come back in at some point with a metal file and just, you know, do a quick file just to smooth those off a little bit. So again, cutting these kind of as low as I can to the nut and covering it with my hat to keep from this thing hitting me in the eyes or the face or just being lost in my room forever. And that's that. So those are trimmed off. All right. Let's dive into drilling some holes and we'll get this thing bent and we'll be done very quickly here. So this is the shape that I kind of came up with for this. And again, you'll see when I'm, as I show you the way that I've drilled these holes and the way that this is going in, this is going to make a lot more sense. So you guys can probably see, unfortunately, I drilled 2 holes. I would recommend doing this hole, I kind of forgot about it, before you put the heat panel on the inside of the enclosure. This first one that I drilled, I actually drilled too close to the panel itself, and literally I can actually see the panel through this first hole. So the panel is actually right there. So I had to drill a second one that was a little bit further away. So again, just going back to it, this is roughly the shape, and the whole idea of this is that it's going to go down and in, and it curves and it places the probe. I'll actually show you on this one. I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see. You see my probe right there? It just puts that probe just, you know, within about a ½ inch or so of the panel, and that has given me a really good result. And I'll show you how this is secured. This is kind of my favorite part. So I'm just going to quickly look inside, make sure that this is hitting where I want it to, which it does, and I'm going to drill a couple more holes. So I should have been more prepared with my drill bits. Again, I think I'm just using the same. This hole is going to kind of depend on the zip ties that you're using. Again, that's the way that I choose to retain all of my stuff, is with zip ties. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill some small holes on either side of this. I promise this will make sense in just a second. All right, sorry about that, guys. It took me a little bit longer to kind of finagle this this zip tie in there than what I kind of expected it to take. But again, you'll see why I again drilled those 2 smaller holes right there. I did also I went ahead and I got my my probe, this black wire, my probe run into that same hole. That's why that hole is so big. It's not, obviously it has to fit both the metal from the coat hanger as well as the probe. And so I'll try to show you guys in a clip as well. This probe is not only zip tied right here, it is zip tied in 2 other points on the inside of the enclosure to this piece of metal to just ensure that it stays where I want it to be at. And I am flush cutting these zip ties so there's no sharp edges. So again, just if the snake does rub on the zip ties in there, there's not going to be any issues. And again, there's 2 different zip ties in there, so it should never be an issue in terms of those things coming off. But yeah, and you can see again this probe is attached, you know, super strong. This has a little bit of wiggle to it, but not enough to where it can't flip over, it can't turn, and can't move enough to take the probe and move it, where it's not being directly affected by the heat panel. So that again is just kind of my favorite little innovation, if you will, in terms of how I've got this all set up. So I'll show you. I'll cut some clips of what this looks like on the inside, and that's pretty much it. That's the way that I did it. That's been the only thing that I found personally that worked in terms of getting these things set up and the temperatures being regulated properly. For those that know me, you guys know I'm real particular about how my animals are kept. I'm real particular about just things being done the right way, you know. Let me know, like, what have you guys seen? Because again, I see so many people that have their heat panels with their probes set up in the same placements that I previously was using, and I haven't heard any complaints from anyone. So I don't know if it's just that people aren't monitoring their temperatures as closely as I was, where I was checking them, you know, every hour, 2 hours, 3 hours with no animal in there to kind of verify. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, maybe you guys, I would suggest checking your temps. You know, if you're using a radiant heat panel. To remind people, and I don't think I mentioned it, maybe I did, the heat panels I'm using are Pro Products heat panels. They are literally the best in the game. I know that there's been some complaints, and including myself, in terms of their communication. They can be difficult to get a hold of, but they are worth it. I have heard too many complaints about a lot of the other heat panels on the market, and by a lot, I mean all of them, every other heat panel on the market. I have heard numerous complaints in terms of safety, fire hazards, people that have almost had fires start with their heat panels that were not Pro Products, other companies who have plugs that easily detach that animals can interfere with, things like that. These are the safest heat panels in the business. I like I said, once I got a hold of them, talking to them on the phone, in terms of just their quality control and things, they are bar none. They literally have a test rack that they were using to test my heat panel and every other heat panel that they had in their production line before they were willing to ship them. And so again, it's just, to me, like, that's their dedication to quality. That's their dedication to safety. You know, we've all seen, you know, what can happen in terms of fires and things in this hobby. It's not something that I ever want to experience, and it's not something that I'm willing to take a risk on. So again, that's why I am so particular about you know, my thermostats, my heat probes, making sure that things are secured well, making sure, just all these little things that you can do to just sleep a little better at night, you know. So I wanted to share this. I felt like it was important. I think that was all. I don't think there was anything else that I didn't cover. I know I didn't show like how the cords work on the Pro Products heat panels, but again, it's a super simple thing, and they have instructions that come with them, so I didn't feel like it was necessary to cover. I will update you guys, but you know, in a couple days if need to, if there's any temperature swings with this second enclosure. But again, I've got one running right behind me with the same exact setup, and again, it has worked out really great. So if for some reason something comes up, I'll let you guys know, but I very highly doubt it. This has been super successful for me for the last month or so with that first cage. So I'm glad I was finally able to sit down, get this next one built out the same way with the probe and all, and I'm excited to get this male moved into here and start upgrading some of these other guys into some bigger cages. So like I said, thank you guys again. I know this was a little bit longer than what I planned for it to be. I hope that this was thorough enough for you guys. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. Again, I'll put a list of like all the drill bit sizes and tools and things like that I felt were necessary for doing things the way that I did it in this. And yeah, like I said, otherwise just reach out to me through, you know, either here or Instagram, and you know, if you've got any questions or if there's anything I can help with. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate y'all. Again, this is Zach with Nava Reptiles, and yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. So yeah, we'll see y'all next week.